How great are you, Yah? How great is your mercy? How great are the things you have done for me? How great are you, Yah? Your loving kindness is filling my heart as I sing. How great are you, Yah? How great is your love? It reaches to the heavens. How great is your heart? It sought and rescued me.
And you shall keep the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when you have gathered in your labors out of the field. Well, we are in that time of the year. We are approaching the end of the year of our ingathering. We've been gathering in our small little crops here from our farm here in Montana, and we are at the Memorial of Trumpets and the beginning of the fall holy day season. Today we're going to be presenting part 2 in a series that I've actually started a couple of years ago, and this will be part 2, which will focus our attention on Jericho, Yahushua, and the 7 trumpets, the prophetic prototype of revelation, as we will see as we go into it. The theme we've been using during the Memorial of Trumpets presentation has been the grapevine. And we will continue that theme today, and I think you'll start to see why that's part of the theme of the Memorial of Trumpets as we go into the presentation. But the grapevine, to give a little background, is included as one of the 7 agricultural products indigenous to the promised land that Yahuwah gave the nation of Israel. We see the evidence of these crops that were provided in the promised land in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 7 and 8. For Yahuwah, your Elohim, brings you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and depths that spring out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. Yes, the grapes in the promised land grew in large clusters, as was reported to Moses by the expedition of 12 Israelites who went into the promised land on a reconnaissance mission to spy out Canaan. And they came into the brook of Eshcol and cut down from thence a branch with one cluster of grapes, and they bare it between 2 of them on a staff. It was so big they had to carry it on a staff, it says in Numbers chapter 13. The grape clusters were so large that they carried them between 2 men, and after the settlement in the promised land, men were not to go to war until they had harvested and eaten of their own grape harvest. Deuteronomy 20 verse 6 says, and what man is he that has planted a vineyard and has not yet eaten of it? Let him also go and return to his house, lest he die in battle and another man eat it. So go eat your grapes before you die in battle. So the background and the theme of the grape cluster will develop as we go through this presentation series. And as is our practice and our habit, we want to honor you, our Father, and start with a prayer and ask you to bless this presentation, bless the work, and may it be pleasing to you. But most important is that we seek your kingdom. We seek first your kingdom in our life and honor you in all that we say and do. We pray that you will provide for us physically and spiritually, the manna from heaven, and guide us and lead us, keep us away from Satan and the world and all of the trouble that there is and the time of tribulation as it unfolds. We know that your kingdom is coming and that you have all the glory in heaven above, and we honor you and pray to you now on this Sabbaton, on this day of Trumpets, Memorial of Trumpets, and we pray now in Yeshua's name. Amen. Well, greetings to all. As we continue in this agenda of the Memorial of Trumpets. In the first part, we looked at the background and instructions and really got our feet on the ground what this Day of Trumpets is all about. We talked about the Levitical instructions in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, and we looked at the different kinds of trumpets that we see, the two different kinds, the shofar and the silver trumpet, and we looked at some of the main events that occur in the scriptures that use the trumpet. Today, though, we're going to go into some very interesting scriptures that you find starting in the book of Joshua and the account of Jericho. It's amazing when you start examining this that you look forward and see the forerunner of the events in Jericho and the Battle of Jericho with the events in the book of Revelation. And we will make that comparison today. We'll be spending our time in the first few chapters of Joshua and in multiple chapters in Revelation. So let's get started. Let's start with a little bit of background and foundation about Jericho. And of importance is where it's located. And if you look on a map, even to this day, there is a location called Jericho, and it's on the northwest corner of the Dead Sea, just not far from the Jordan River, and maybe 20-25 miles as the land provides direction to Jerusalem, just a little bit south and largely west from Jericho. But not far from Jericho is Jerusalem. So this location is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan, and their first major military encounter was this, what would have been a formidable structure of the town or the city called Jericho. And Jericho has been the site of a number of archaeological excavations, and so the evidence that's available is quite extensive of what this city looked like and how it dated back in history. And this representation of what the city looked like is a pretty typical one if you do the research on it, that it was somewhat of an oval-shaped city and had two barrier walls, a lower wall and an upper wall, and it had somewhat of a moat or a ditch going around it with a revetment wall that was, this kind of construction was difficult for any type of invasion to overcome. So the inhabitants of Jericho in the day of around 1400, when Joshua and all the children of Israel came upon it, these people that lived there were probably pretty confident that there wasn't going to be a big problem with them. A little bit of background on the city itself. It's, I would say, likely one of the oldest cities that we know of in the world, because it's still inhabited, at least nearby. There is a city called Jericho. It's not inhabited on this exact spot, but a mile or two away is actually the city today of Jericho. Now these defensive walls that were part of the city were quite extensive themselves. There were two of them, and they're thought to both be similar, but one inside the other, and the upper wall or the inner wall somewhat higher than the other. These walls were about 6 feet across on top and about 20 feet high. There was a terraced embankment of 15 to 20 feet that led up to the lower wall, and somewhat of a terrace between the lower wall and the upper wall also, as the picture defines. The combined wall height was something like 30, 35, maybe as high as 40 feet. And so if you looked at this from a distance as you were coming across the plain there, as you crossed the Jordan River, you would see what would look like a pretty tall wall, 30 to 40 feet high, and probably give you second thoughts of why you would want to approach this city. In the time of the book of Joshua, it was thought that there was around 1,000, 1,200 people that lived in this city. The inner city is something around about 6 acres. So this is not a huge metropolis or anything, nothing like Babylon or the location over in Iraq. And the total area was something like about 9 acres. So not a huge area, but well fortified. It had also of interest its own internal water supply. So the En Sultan spring is inside the walls of this, so the inhabitants had a continuous water supply if they ever were under siege. So that gave them a lot of comfort, I guess. And it was thought of as an impregnable fortress fundamentally. The present day, it's a tell or a mound, and it's called Es Sultan, and you can visit it and stand on the many layers of dirt over which this original city occupied. And if you look at what's going on there today, its current government is under the Palestinian Authority. There's something around 18,000 people living in what's called the city of Jericho today, and it's an Israeli-occupied land on the West Bank since the 1967 war, although it's notable that the governance is through the Palestinian Authority. So that gives us a little bit of background on what we're talking about here and what Joshua and the Israelites would have encountered when they first came over the Jordan and saw this fortress before them. So as we unfold this, we're going to start in Joshua chapter 6. And this is, of course, after the Passover event in Joshua chapter 5. So I want to just read through this. Now Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. And Yahuwah said unto Joshua, see, and I highlighted that. Yahuwah said to Joshua, see, and you'll know why I highlighted it here shortly. I have given into your hand Jericho. So here's a verb tense problem. They haven't taken it yet, but Yahuwah says he's given it to them. And I've also given you the king thereof. And you shall compass or revolve the city, all you men of war, and go around about the city once. Thus shall you do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets. These are shofars of ram's horns. These are ram's horn of a type called Yobel, which is the Jubilee ram's horn. And the 7th day you shall compass the city 7 times. So we see this going around the city once each of the first 6 days and 7 times on the 7th day. And the priest shall blow with the ram's horn, and it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, or the shofar as it would be more properly interpreted, and the Yobel as it would be more properly interpreted. The ram's horn here is translated from the word Yobel. And when you hear the sound of the trumpet, which is the ram's horn, all the people shall shout. And they shall shout, and this word is ruah, or split the ears with sound, and it'll shout loud, with a great shout, a great ruah, or teruah. And the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up, every man straight before him. So I've underlined, there's a lot going on in this first 5 verses, and I've underlined this phrase, it shall come to pass. So you're going to notice it shall come to pass a number of times as we go through the presentation. And I just want to start you out by being aware of looking for it. So the first thing we're going to do is, we've read these first few verses, but it's useful at this point to go into Revelation and compare this going around the city 7 days to some of the events that happened in Revelation and that will happen in Revelation. And I believe that the first events of the going around the city, compassing the city in 7 days, revolves around the 7 seals. So we're going to look at the 7 seals, and I think you'll see how the comparisons come after we get a foundation under us of what these scriptures say. So let's go to Revelation and in chapter 5 and read through this account of the seals. And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside. So written on 2 sides, and it's sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof?" And no man in heaven nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. So when something is sealed like this, it's usually sealed because it's a very important document, and only certain people in this time in the Roman Empire would have been authorized to break the seal. So in this case, nobody is able to break this seal because this document is so important. And I wept much. This is John speaking. And I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders said unto me, "Weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof." And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of Yahuwah sent forth into all the earth. And he, meaning Yeshua, came and took the book out of the right hand of him, meaning Yahuwah, who sat on the throne. Now, it's useful to keep in mind that the background of what Revelation 5 is talking about and who it's addressing particularly. And we get to who it's addressing in Revelation chapter 1 in a couple of spots here, verses 4 and 11. John, to the 7 churches which are in Asia, grace be unto you and peace from him which is and which was and which is to come, and from the 7 spirits which are before his throne. What you see, write in a book and send it to the 7 assemblies, the 7 churches. And you see that right up front in Revelation. So this 7 seals that are unfolding here are written, the whole book is written to the 7 assemblies. So I would say, listen up. The 7 assemblies, it may only be 4 assemblies left. There's some question in my mind whether Ephesus, Smyrna, and Pergamos are still in effect, but certainly Thyatira, Philadelphia, Laodicea, and Sardis are still active, would seem active, because the tribulation in one form or another is mentioned to those 4 assemblies. In any case, that's a topic all on its own, but this book of Revelation, particularly as the seals unfolding, are written for the admonition of the assemblies. And we'll take a look at these first 4 seals. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And so you might say, well, this white horse, this must be return of Messiah. No, this is not the return of the Messiah. This is a substitute. This is a counterfeit. This is Satan's choosing, somebody that will look like Messiah and try to act like the Messiah, but it will be a substitute. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the 2nd seal, I heard the 2nd beast say, "Come and see." Now you know why I said back in Joshua, Yahuwah said, "See?" Look what it says in Revelation, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And the 3rd seal unfolded, and when he had opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd beast say, "Here it is again, come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see, you hurt not the oil and the wine. So this is a time of scarcity. Commodities, food commodities are scarce, and a penny doesn't seem like much, but the point of this being that they're being meted out and they're being measured for money. And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, come and see. Here it is again. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth. Notice that it's the fourth part, to kill with a sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beast of the field. So 25% of the earth going to be subject to this killing machine that's unfolding here. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of Yahuwah. Notice it's under the altar. Under the altar, the souls that were slain. So these are the ones that they're under the altar. They're in the presence of Yahuwah, but they're still slain. They're dead. They're under the altar. We're going to see, in contrast to this, that on the altar were some others that will appear here. But under the altar are those that were slain for the word and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice. We're going to see this. I didn't identify it here, but this is megaphone, loud mega voice phone, saying, how long, O Yahuwah, and how holy and true do you not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that they should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. So the called out, the elect, are being talked about here. They're going to be killed for their belief system. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree cast her untimely figs. It's a major astronomical disorder here. And when she is drunken and shaken of a mighty wind, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their place. This scripture has always just grabbed me for the last number of years when I've read it. When the heaven departs as a scroll, when it's rolled together. So you have to imagine a scroll rolling together, maybe something like a Venetian blind or something rolling, or a blind on your wall that you lift up and it rolls itself together. And that's what's going to, the heaven is going to depart that way. What we see in the natural universe is departing that way. And every mountain and island are moved out of their place. This word places means topos, topography, topology, the spot in space and its locality. This is a major geological event on top of an astronomical event. So the sixth seal that we see here introduces and starts unfolding the day of Yahuwah. So let's continue on in verse 15. And the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath, this is the great day of Yahuwah, and actually we're going to look at that in depth in the part 3 of this presentation series, the day of Yahuwah. That great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Now, I didn't want to miss this mention of the stars fell unto the earth as a fig tree cast her untimely figs. So with the wind shakes the fig tree, it casts off its figs that are not ripe yet, I guess in some ways they could be overripe also, but probably the ones that aren't ripe. There's a lot on the fig tree. I almost took a diversion and went into some of the background about the fig, but I'm just going to leave it with what is said in Matthew 24, what Yeshua said, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near." There's a lot on the fig tree. There's a parable about the non-producing fig tree that Yeshua talked about, and but this parable about putting when his branch is yet tender and he puts forth leaves, don't you know that summer is near? So this should be an indicator of the time that is transpiring here. Now of note, when we get to the seventh seal, this opens the seven trumpets. So, and when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of a half an hour. Silence for a half an hour. And I saw the seven angels which stood before Yahuwah, and to them were given seven trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. And there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar. So the first mention that we had was the saints that were under the altar, because they were dead. They were they had been sanctified, but they were dead. And now the saints, with the prayers that are coming, are upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before Yahuwah out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it to the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake, and the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared to sound. So we have the seven seals now under our belt. And when we go back to our account in Joshua, we should start to see that there are some parallels with some of the things that are being said. So as we go through the book of Joshua in chapter 6 and in chapter 10, by the way, we're going to see that these events that I've read in Revelation, both events I just read and the seven trumpets that I'm about to read, we're going to see the comparison and the forward pointer, the prototype of what's being said in Joshua with these events. So the next part I want to go into is that there are seven priests and seven trumpets, and we see that in item number 2 here. 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets. These are shofars of Yobel, and that's significant to keep that in mind. We'll highlight that when we get to it. So we'll look now to the comparison of the 7 priests and the 7 trumpets in Joshua with the 7 priests, the 7 angels and the 7 trumpets in Revelation. So let's go look at that and read through that section of Revelation. And we will, I'll be re-quoting some little snippets of these scriptures as we go, but I want to get the fullness of them before I just quote some small parts. So the 7 angels and the 7 trumpets start out, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. I will note that it says all the green grass, but we're going to see when we get to the 5th trump that there's grass that's being protected. So I would submit that all the grass being burnt up here is referring to all of the third part of it. And I think you'll see the connection to that when we get to the 5th trumpet. And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life, they died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. So we're seeing a third part of destruction here. It's going to be of heaven and earth once we get through the first 4 trumpets. So keep in mind, it's heaven, it's the heavens and the earth that's being talked about here, and a third part being destroyed. And this great mountain burning with fire that was cast into the sea, my mind's eye goes to something like an asteroid that, in fact, a huge asteroid that in fact does hit the earth. And this is one of the things you see in the news from time to time now, that there was a near miss. Oh, there was another near miss. Just about a month or 2 ago, there was an asteroid that came very close in astronomical terms, and it came between the moon and the earth, and that's 250,000 miles, and but in astronomical terms, that's a near a grazing blow. But in any case, my mind's eye sees these great mountains burning with fire as something like an asteroid. It could be a supernatural event, certainly, but an asteroid would fit the description of this real appropriately, as the asteroid heats up in the Earth's atmosphere and it's burning with fire, and if it's big enough, it's cast into the sea. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven. So here's either another asteroid, or some would say, some commentaries comment that this might be an angel, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers. So in the second angel was about the sea. Now we have the rivers, a third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of water, in other words, the headwaters. And the name of the star is called wormwood, which means bitterness and calamity. And the third part of the waters became as bitterness or calamity. And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, then the night likewise also. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound. So there's 3 more coming that are woe, woe, woe. A couple of comments about this, because a third part of the sun was smitten. And this word smitten in the Greek means flattening out, pound, or inflict calamity. So really up until just recently, when I read this, my mind's eye was the sun was smitten, and the moon, it was because there was so much smoke in the atmosphere from the military machines and war, that's why the sun was darkened. This gives the indication that there are some astronomical events that are happening, some collisions. The sun was smitten and flattened out. So was it, I'm not sure about this, but is the sun hit by some other large body in the universe and causes a disruption, and the moon and the stars? So the known visible universe that we see seems to be having disruption from their normal natural order. And the third part of them was darkened. It was obscured. It was concealed. So I guess that's where you get the idea this could be smoke. But whatever is happening here, this event calls for a darkening of the sun, moon, and stars. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven unto the earth. Here's another one of those star from heaven. Is it an asteroid or is it an angel? I'm not attached to either explanation, but it says it's a star that falls from heaven, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So this star seems to be referred to as a he, and would appear that it would be perhaps an angel that was given the key to a bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit. Notice that he came from heaven to the earth to open this pit. So that would insinuate to me that the bottomless pit is on the earth. And where's the only place that there could be a bottomless pit on the earth. Well, that would be the center of the earth. There would be no bottom in the center. So as the smoke rises out of the pit, and it's as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened, it's obscured again. And this time it tells us by reason of the smoke of the pit. So this would appear to me, when you think about this, that an angel comes that's got a key and opens up a cavern that goes to the center of the earth, and this smoke comes out. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth. So there has to be grass left over from the previous trumpets in order for this to be the case. So now you probably see why I said probably the previous destruction of grass was only the 1/3. Now there's grass left over. Neither any green thing are they to hurt, neither any tree, but only those men which don't have the seal of Yahuwah in their foreheads. So this word seal is a signet or stamp impressed as a mark of privacy or genuineness. So if you don't have the genuine stamp on your forehead that you're of genuine character and your robe is white, then these locusts are going to be a plague to you. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he strikes a man. I'm guessing, I've never been bitten by a scorpion, but I'm guessing it's a terrible sting. And in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So they're miserable, but for some reason they're not able to die. They're not able to commit suicide. Not just sure why that is. It's an interesting statement. And then there's a contrasting scripture of this same word of seal or signet or stamp of genuineness in Revelation chapter 7 that I want to include. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal, same signet, of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our Elohim in their forehead. So the word is sealed here is just slightly different version of the other one, but it comes from G4973, and it means the same thing. A private mark for security or preservation. And I heard the number of them that were preserved or sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. So not very many are sealed here. And now the first woe occurs, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. Now, this is pretty interesting scripture here. So a horse prepared unto battle. So I would view this as a war machine. This is a military statement. And on their heads, they had crowns like gold. What does that represent? Well, it represents rulers and conquerors. And their faces were as the faces of men. So it looked like these were men. I would submit that with the advancement in AI, that these are intelligent creatures or humanoids with artificial intelligence, and maybe some crossbreed cyborg. I don't know for sure, but all of this technology is here today and on the horizon with drones and cyborgs and the kind of machines that man will make to fight each other. Of note also is in the book of Joel, and we're going to go into that in the next couple of sessions in this series on trumpets. There's quite a section about the locusts, the 4 locusts that one eats the next, and what that all represents. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned to part 3 and 4 of the Trumpets series. And they had also hair as the hair of woman. So they must be attractive to look at, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions, so they were forceful and strong. And they had breastplates, which means they must be tough, and as it were, breastplates of iron, a further definition how impenetrable and bulletproof and difficult to destroy these machines must be. And the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running into battle. So real formidable, intimidating sound. This is an apocalypse of a grand order here that's developing and being described by John. So the sound of the wings, something like the helicopters that fly around, even one or two of them, helicopters always seem to have a formidable chopping kind of a sound. And when you hear one, you go look and see where is it and where's it going, let alone if there were hundreds or thousands of these kind of machines. And that's what's being described here as the fifth trumpet. And they had tails like scorpions. So here's a little bit more about their armor. And there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. So this word hurt was to be ruthless and do wrong, to be unjust. So these are killing machines for no good purpose. And they were to be able to do this 5 months, or able to torture and persecute for 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. So this is no surprise, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, the destroying angel. But in the Greek tongue, his name is Apollyon, or the destroyer. One woe is past, and behold, there are 2 woes more hereafter. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before Yahuwah, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed and were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year for to slay a third part of men. I wonder about the 4 angels, and there are 4 angels, and there are 4 time periods. So I'm not sure, but are all 4 angels going to have all 4 time periods, or is one angel going to have an hour, and one going to have a day, one going to have a month, one going to have a year? I don't know. But to slay the third part of men. So notice now that the character of the machines is changing. The war machines now are killing. Yes, they've been killing off and on all along, but until now, the oppression has been to the environment, and largely to the environment. So now we're seeing that this these drones or artificial intelligent machines are going to start slaying men. In other words, they're going to be reprogrammed to do more than they originally did. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. When you put it together, that's what it looks like, 200 million. That's a big number, and I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, and of jacinth, and of brimstone. So I saw the horses in the vision. This is possibly the locusts that are like unto horses in the 5th trumpet, but are now unleashed. So it doesn't describe what the horses are here, if there's something different, but I would say it's very probable that these locusts and the horses are one in the same. And that it starts to describe what they look like with breastplates of fire, and jacinth and brimstone, which the fire representing a flame or red and orange, and jacinth representing hyacinthan, a deep blue, and brimstone, sulfur and bright yellow. And if you put that together, you get these colors, red, blue, and yellow, basically. And I wondered if that might be part of the insignia or icon representation of this beast power and the army. Will this be something to do with a flag? I don't know. But to go on, and the heads of the horses were as heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was a third part of men killed by the fire and by the smoke and the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails. For their tails were likened to serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And the rest of the men, which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. So most people are not repenting here. Neither repented they of their murders nor of their pharmakeia, interesting word for medication, magic, and witchcraft, nor of their porneia, or their spiritual, physical and spiritual idolatry and harlotry. So that gets us to the seventh trumpet, or the third woe. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe comes. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were megaphone in heaven, great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our sovereign and of the Messiah, of his Messiah. The kingdoms of this world means the orderly arrangement, including the inhabitants. It's intended to be a complete harmonious system, but it has degenerated to chaos. But now the Messiah is going to return, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders which sat before Yahuwah on their seats fell upon their faces and worshipped Yahuwah, saying, we give you thanks, O Yahuwah Elohim omnipotent, which are and was and are to come, because you have taken to you your great power and have reigned. And the nations were angry, and your wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that you should give reward unto the servants, the prophets, and the saints, and them that fear your name, small and great. And should destroy them which destroy, or cause ruin, or rot to the earth. And the temple of Yahuwah was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings, voices, thunderings, and earthquake, and great hail. So I wanted to back up, though, to talk about the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that you should give reward unto your servants, the prophets. So this is talking about the resurrection. We'll see this in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and 1 Corinthians 15, and a lot more to be said about that. And to the saints which fear your name, small and great. So here's a reference to what's about to happen. And remember, this is the seventh trump. So when you look into the seventh trump, this is when the seventh trump blows and there is a resurrection. So the third woe also includes the ouster of Satan. The accuser is cast down to the earth. It's as if the earth dwellers want him, you get him full time. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our Elohim day and night, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. And it goes on to say, therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. Woe to them, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has but a short time. And this seventh trumpet also now opens up the seven last plagues. And one of the four beasts gave into the seven trumpets 7 golden vials full of the wrath of Yahuwah, who lives forever and ever. And the temple was filled with the smoke from the glory of Yahuwah and from his power. And no man was able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled. So no man is able to enter. That would say to me that when the smoke clears, man will be able to enter. That will be the resurrected saints. And the first went and poured out his vial on the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worship his image. This word image is useful because it's in the Greek icon, or icon in the English. It's a likeness, a statue, or a representation. So everybody that uses a computer knows that there are icons that launch programs, and that icon is a representation of what the program provides and what it represents. So here's an image that's going to be an icon. Probably going to see it all over the earth. This one icon image of the substitute Messiah, the false Messiah, the anti-Messiah, depending on what you want to call him, all the same, and the beast power will have this icon. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea. So vial on the earth, now on the sea, and it became as blood of a dead man, and every soul died in the sea. And the third angel poured out his vial upon rivers and fountains, and they became blood. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a megaphone out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, "It is done." It is finished. Same terminology that Yeshua used, and we see that in John 19. It is finished, and he bowed his head and gave up the spirit. Slightly different Greek translation, but similar in meaning. It's finished, it's done. And so what we have is the wrath of Yahuwah being poured out on the earth, the sea, the rivers, the sun, the seed of the beast, the great river Euphrates, and into the air. What's left? The earth is going to be a mess. And this Euphrates that's dried up is interesting to contemplate, because how is the Euphrates dried up? You say, well, that might be pretty hard. And the water was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Sounds like there's going to be a massive army. I suspect it might be this 200 million drone army that's we just talked about coming from the east, and they'll need a way to cross over the Euphrates. Of course, there are bridges, but it says it's going to be dried up. Has it ever been dried up before? Turns out it has. And in Daniel chapter 5, we see the scripture about this. Doesn't say in Daniel 5 that it was dried up, but the other secular historical accounts show that it was. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans or the Babylonians, slain, and Darius the Mede took the kingdom, being about 62 years old, 62 years old. You see collaborative accounts in Herodotus, the Babylonian Chronicles, and the Cyrus Cylinder that this event was the result of the Euphrates being stopped up by Cyrus's army in 539 BCE, and General Darius led the command into Babylon at that time, and ended up killing Belshazzar. And of course, Daniel was there to talk about this. So this event has actually happened before, and the river actually was diverted by Cyrus. It was diverted into a canal so that the level of the river going through Babylon got so low that the soldiers in what would have probably been under Darius's command were able to walk through the water and get into the city. Amazing events. So the 7 last plagues are an extension of this 7 trumpets. And we are still on the first page in Joshua, but we're going to go to a couple of different items now. So we should have a real good foundation of all of the parallel events that I'm going to be referring to as we go through this account in Joshua. And but we want to look at some other aspects of it as we go. So the third item that we want to highlight here is the Yobel is mentioned. So it came to pass when they shall make a long blast of the Yobel, and they shall hear the sound of the trumpet, the people shall shout. So where do we see reference to this in Revelation? Well, we see what I've been talking about is megaphone. And in Revelation 11, and the 7th angel sounded, I just read this, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of Yahuwah and of his Messiah. He shall reign forever and ever. So the seventh angel sounded, and I made a point of saying that there were megaphones or megaphone. This word mega means exceedingly big, loud, and strong. And the word voices is the Greek word phone or phone. It means to give a disclosure. So a disclosure is being given here by this great sound, this loud sound, or giving an address. So it could be somebody speaking loudly. And we see this, this terminology, megaphone, in quite a number of places, 46 places total in the New Testament. 24, over half of the occurrences are in Revelation. So it's been a pretty amazing discovery to see this in Revelation, this megaphone in Revelation. The first place that we see it, though, in the New Testament is the first occurrence happens to be in Matthew 24. And he shall ascend, he shall send his angels, Yeshua speaking, with a megaphone of a trumpet. And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. I would submit that the Yobel and this great sound, or this megaphone or megaphone, are one and the same things. And you see also this terminology, loud voice or megaphone, used by Yeshua 5 different times in this theme of when Yeshua was crucified and hanging on the post. And Yeshua cried out with a loud voice, a megaphone, and gave up the ghost, gave up the spirit. So the Yobel here starts to have extension into the New Testament, particularly into the book of Revelation. And the walls fall down. We see the item number 4 at the end of Joshua 6, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat. Where do we see that in Revelation? Well, Revelation 18, and after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory, and he cried mightily with a strong voice. Guess what? A megaphone saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen. And it says it twice. So if it's fallen once, it must be pretty flat if it's fallen the second time and has become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul spirit and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. I hope you're starting to see here where we're heading with this, that the parallels are pretty stunning. Now, one question that I just personally have about this is, what time of year is it? We certainly start to see here that Jericho is a shadow or a foreshadow or a forerunner of the events in Revelation, particularly the seals, the trumpets, and the 7 plagues. But when did Joshua 6 in this section of scripture actually occur? You know from Joshua chapter 5 that the Passover occurred. And when we read on after the Passover, we sort of assume that Joshua 6 happened immediately after the Passover. So we seem to put in our mind's eye, at least I have in the past, put in my mind's eye, well, this is a springtime event that's going on here with the fall of Jericho. I would submit that it perhaps is not, that there were some months that went by with the Israelites camped outside the gates. Remember what the Amalekites, the Amorites said that they closed up their gates, and fundamentally they were ready for a long siege. And I've noted that it came to pass is terminology that is used here. And you're going to see it came to pass several times, and each time that it occurs, more time has to be taking place. So when something comes to pass, it doesn't necessarily come to pass on the next day. It could have come to pass on the next month or 3 or 6 months down the road. So keep an eye on it shall come to pass as we go forward here. I would suggest that because the Yobel is mentioned here, that we might have an atonement, a trumpets, or a memorial of trumpets, which is what we're commemorating now, the blowing of trumpets. And 10 days later on atonement, and we'll look at that scripture here in Leviticus 25 shortly, the Yobel is blown. So I'm wondering if this series of events in Jericho took place in the fall rather than in the spring. And going on in the account in Joshua, and Joshua, the son of Nun, called the priest and said unto them, take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets, shofar, of Yobel before the ark of Yahuwah. And he said unto the people, pass on and compass the city, and let him that is armed pass before the ark of the city. And it came to pass, when Joshua had spoken unto the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 shofar of Yobel passed on before Yahuwah and blew with the shofar, and the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah followed them. So let's unwind some of this. Let's first of all, I like to highlight this. Some years ago, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years, I don't remember just how long ago, I discovered that Joshua has the same name as Jesus. And it's when it started to occur to me that nobody would have known Jesus in the first century by that name, because his name wasn't a Greek name. Jesus' name was a Hebrew name. And we see this in Matthew chapter 1 in a couple of places, but let me read this account here. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privately. So, because he didn't think, he knew it wasn't his child, and he thought it must have been somebody else's. Well, it was of the Spirit. But while he thought on these things, behold, the angel of Yahuwah appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, you son of David, you son of David. So he's a good Jewish boy, you bet on that. Fear not to take unto you Mary your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Spirit. And she shall bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. So that's what we see in the English translation, for he shall save his people from their sins. Now, do you think the angel was talking to Joseph here in English or Greek? I doubt it. I'll bet he was talking to Joseph in Hebrew. And the angel would have told Jesus what his name was in Hebrew. And his name wasn't Jesus, nor was it Isus. It was Yeshua or Yahushua. And we see that if you just simply go look in Strong's, it's an easy discovery. And you find out that Jesus' name is of Hebrew origin, and that Hebrew origin is in Strong's number H3091. And when you go look, what you'll find is that's the same Hebrew name that Joshua is translated from. It's interesting to note that Joshua or Yahshua has a much closer translation to his real name than Jesus does. It blows my mind to see this, and for mainstream Christianity to ignore it as not important. Everything is important in these scriptures, and names do matter. So Yeshua, number 1, is the man who is here at Jericho. Yeshua, number 2, is the man from Nazareth who became the Messiah, who was the Messiah, who gave his life for us. And his name means something. It means the Father, his name is Yahuwah saves, or Jehovah saves. It's amazing to understand this, because salvation has at its root Yeshua. It's about the same name that our Savior has. So that has really struck me since I discovered it some number of years back. But also, you note in this section of scripture that the Ark of the Covenant comes into mind. We're going to pass before Yahuwah and blow with the trumpets, and the Ark of the Covenant followed. So it's the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant had the 10 commandments inside. And I think that's all it had inside. It didn't have the rest of the law of Moses that was given just before this event. By the way, the children of Israel were on the Jordan, camped on the east side of the Jordan and at Moab, and the law as we would know it in Deuteronomy, was given at that point, and the covenant that they took with them was from that law, took the covenant that they took into the promised land. So the Ark of the Covenant has the commandments in it, and we see in Revelation a similar statement. And the temple of Yahuwah was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and earthquake and great hail. So the ark of his testament in the Greek is diatheke, and it means a disposition or a divisory will. It's of note when you see this that the Ark of the Covenant is in the Hebrew is a compact by passing between pieces of flesh. In other words, blood. This is somewhat of a covenant of blood, and when it's a berith, because animals died and people committed to the compact or the covenant. And what's the new covenant? Well, the new covenant is diatheke, and it's a divisory will, and a divisory will has at its core a testator. The testator is the one that has to die and give his blood before the will is in effect. So pretty amazing to see this reference to the Ark of the Covenant berith versus the Ark of the Covenant diatheke, and that this all points to Yeshua. Yeshua is the one that gave his life for us. So the centerpiece of it's the centerpiece of Joshua's victory over Jericho, and it's the centerpiece of Yeshua's victory over Babylon. And then going on in Joshua chapter 6, starting in verse 9, and the armed men went before the priest that blew with the trumpets. And the rear reward, or the rear guard, came after the ark, and the priest going on and blowing with the trumpets. And Joshua had commanded the people, saying, you shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth until the day I bid you shout. Then you shall shout. Not until then. So be quiet until then. So the ark of Yahuwah compassed the city, going about it once, and they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. And Yeshua rose early in the morning, and the priest took up the ark of Yahuwah, and 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of Yobel before the ark of Yahuwah went on continually and blew with the trumpets, and the armed men went before them. But the rear reward, those that followed up, came after the ark of Yahuwah, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. Do you imagine this scene here, this location at Jericho, closed up, all the inhabitants looking down from the 30, 40 foot high wall of this event of these Israelites with this carrying this box on poles, probably 4 guys carrying one guy carrying each corner of this box called the ark, with the testament of Yahuwah inside, looking down, seeing this happen, and they're not saying anything the first 6 days, and they're probably standing up there jeering at them and making fun of them for how stupid they look, and they probably had their white gowns on also, and plus on top of that there's guys that blow a trumpet once each day, and then on the 7th day they're going to blow it 7 times. So, but notice how this goes here, and the first comment that we have is, you shall not shout nor make any noise. What do we see in Revelation? And when he had opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of a half hour, no noise. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before Yahuwah, and to them which were given 7 trumpets. Also notice in 1 Thessalonians 5, for yourself know perfectly that the day of Yahuwah so comes as a thief in the night. How does the thief come? Making noise? No, comes silent. For when they shall say peace and safety, then suddenly destruction comes upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Now, the Jubilee is mentioned in several places here. This is the 5th occurrence of Yobel in this account in Joshua. So I want to take a look at it. And the Jubilee is about restoring the land to its original owners, forgiving debt. It's a master reset. And the original owners of the land here in this case is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So the Canaanites and the Amorites and the Amalekites and all of the non-Israelite tribes had taken over this land. It's being restored now to its original owner. Let's take a look at this word Yobel. And you find a whole chapter in Leviticus 25 that gives you some instruction on this. And also in Leviticus 27, some additional instruction is given. But you shall number 7 Sabbaths of years unto you, 7 times 7 years. And the space of 7 Sabbaths a year shall be unto you 49 years. Then you shall cause the shofar of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement, you shall make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. This is not quite an accurate translation in the authorized version here, because the word trumpet of the Jubilee really should be trumpet of the trumpets, or the trumpet of the shouting, to sound on the 10th day of the month. It's somewhat of a minor point. I think the context is okay, but just note that that's there. And notice that it happens on the 7th month in the day of atonement. When is that? Well, it's the 10th day of the 7th month. And you shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty or freedom, or become clear and pure throughout all the land unto the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a Yobel. And the word Yobel is translated as a continuous blast of the horn and the festival that it introduces. It shall be a Yobel unto you, and you shall return every man unto his possession, and you shall return every man unto his family. A Yobel shall that 50th year be to you. You shall not sow, neither reap that which grows of itself in it, nor gather the grains in it of the vine undressed, for it is a Yobel. It shall be holy unto you. You shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. In the year of this Yobel, you shall return every man unto his possession. So I believe that the Yobel is coming up here in another about 8 years, but we're entering this next 10 days from now on Yom Kippur Atonement. I believe we're entering into the sabbatical year. So, and this would be the 7th of the 7 cycle of the sabbatical year coming up. So the 6th of the 7th sabbatical year, the 6th of 7, not the 7th. The 7th will come up 7 more years from now, and then followed by that. So when we get into the late 2020s, it would appear that a Yobel would be coming according to the work that we've done here. So we'll save all of that discussion and dialogue for another time. But the Yobel is significant and still in effect. And notice that it's the 50th year, not the 49th. It's easy to see that it can't be it can't be the first year of the next 49-year cycle, because it says that you don't sow or reap. And the first year of the next cycle is the first part of 6 years of sowing and reaping. So if you look at this account, you sow and reap for 6 years, and then you have a sabbatical. So the first cycle of that would be disrupted if you made the Jubilee the first year of that next cycle. So you'd only have 5 years of sowing and reaping instead of 6. So I think it's flawed to say that the Jubilee 50th year is actually intercalated with the first year of the next cycle. I don't believe that would be a good exegesis of this scripture. In any case, save for another time. And this word Yobel is found some 27 times in the Tanakh. Of interest, the first time that you see it is at the account in Exodus chapter 19 and 20 during the giving of the 10 commandments at Mount Sinai, which was probably a Shavuot or Pentecost event. Most of the occurrences, though, are in the book of Leviticus as instruction. And incidentally, you have no indication of Yobel being kept that we can find in the scriptures. You don't see in Nehemiah or Ezra that they kept a a Yobel, a Jubilee year. You find evidence that they kept sabbatical years, but you don't find Yobel. This is the only account in Joshua that uses this terminology Yobel. So I would think that this is telling us also, since it's using this terminology 5 times, that this in fact is a Yobel. Plus, it's a reset for the land. It's a start. It's a start of the Israelites occupying the promised land, which was given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So more about that on another day. And the second day they compassed the city once and returned unto the camp. So they did 6 days. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose early about the dawning of the day and compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they compassed the city 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time. So you see, time goes by every time you see this terminology, it came to pass. And it came to pass at the 7th time, when the priest blew with the shofar, Yahushua said unto the people, shout, for Yahuwah has given you the city. Done deal. Past tense. And the city shall be accursed, even it and all that are therein, to Yahuwah. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. So several events here that we'll take a look at with Rahab and the 2 spies saved by this scarlet rope. And see that back in Joshua 2. Behold, when we come into the land, you shall bind this line of scarlet, which means crimson or blood red thread, in the window which you did let us down by. And you shall bring your father and your mother and your brethren and all your father's house home unto you. So this is the instruction that she's getting before this siege of Jericho, and as a reminder of what it's all about. Now, Rahab is one of 5 women mentioned in the scripture, and the first one, of course, is in the genealogy, of Yeshua. So first one you see in Yeshua's genealogy, if you look back in Matthew 5, is Tamar with Judah. And then you see, and Salmon begot Boaz of Rahab, and Boaz begot Obed of Ruth, and Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David the king. And of course, the lineage goes on to get to Yeshua and through Mary. So this Rahab, that Salmon and Rahab were husband and wife, it would appear here, and begot Boaz. It would appear that this is the same Rahab as we're talking about in Joshua 6, although there's controversy about that because if you put a timeline together, Rahab would probably have to be 60, 70 years old, something like that, when Boaz was born. So does that mean that that didn't happen? Well, not necessarily at all. So the study I've done on this would indicate that this is the same Rahab from Salmon married Rahab, the same Rahab that came from this account at Jericho. So the Israelites are saved as a result of this crimson red, blood red rope, and Gentiles are saved by it also. So we got both sides of the equation forward pointing to Yeshua, and it also introduces the blood of Yeshua, because we are saved by his grace as Rahab was saved by the grace and the gift of being saved out of this siege. And it establishes the pattern for the future. So it all points to Yeshua, and he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, with blood, crimson red blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahuwah. And the armies which were in heaven followed upon him with white horses, clothed in fine linen and white and clean. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. He treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty Yahuwah. So now you might see why the winepress is important and the grapes are important. This winepress that, we press our grapes and make it into grape juice and wine ourselves, but here's the metaphor is used of a wine press and the fierceness of the wrath of Almighty Yahuwah. So here's the connection to the theme of this presentation that's right behind me, the grapes. And he has on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Master of Masters. So this crimson red rope that was used has some real legs to it that we can examine even further. And going on in verse 18 in Joshua 6, and you in any wise keep yourself from the accursed thing, that which should have been destroyed, lest you make yourself accursed when you take of the accursed thing and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of brass and iron are consecrated. They're sacred unto Yahuwah. They shall come into the treasury of Yahuwah. So the people shouted, the ruah. They sounded an alarm when the priest blew with the trumpets. And it came to pass, when the people heard the sound of the trumpet and the people shouted with a great shout again, that the wall fell down flat so that the people went up. They ascended into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. So we got some pretty amazing events here. The first one talking about the accursed thing. Now the accursed thing has to do with this guy Achan. And Achan's name, I don't know how this comes about, but Achan's name just itself in Hebrew means trouble. He coveted this Babylonian garment, it says, and it uses the term Babylonian garment. You know, it could have been, you know, garment from Persia or Tyre or Sidon or some other place, but no, it's a Babylonian garment. That's pretty striking all by itself. And he took gold and silver, which amounted to, if you convert the shekels into grams and ounces, it's about 17 ounces of gold and 77 ounces of silver, give or take. We got $25,000 or $30,000 worth of precious metals here, along with this Babylonian garment. And you would compare with what goes on in Revelation to come out of her. Achan should have never done this. It cost him his life, of course. But let's read a little bit about this in Revelation 18. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. There's porneia again. And the kings of the earth have committed porneia with her, you know, spiritual and physical idolatry. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. That means her luxury. You know, what did Achan take here? He took the luxury. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yahuwah has remembered her iniquities. Wow. So the accursed thing here are the items that have to do with luxury in Revelation, and they have to do with coveting in this account in Joshua chapter 6. But it's a Babylonian garment, and if you look up the Hebrew, it means from Shinar. So, boy, do we have any Babylonian luxury items in our possession? We probably want to try to get rid of them if we do. The second item it talks about here in the context of this is the silver, gold, and vessels of brass and iron. They're holy. That's what Yahuwah says, they're holy unto me. What does that all of that mean? Well, what is silver, gold, brass, and iron? Well, when you go look into this, you'll find some pretty interesting comparison to it in the book of Daniel chapter 2. And Daniel 2 says, you, O king, saw and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before you, and the form thereof was terrible or awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, and his belly and thighs of brass, and his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part clay. You saw till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. Then was the iron and the brass and the silver and the gold broken to pieces together. and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. In other words, it just blew away. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. You are this head of gold, and after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to you, which would have been the silver kingdom if you read the rest of the accounts in Daniel, the silver kingdom, which would have been the Persians, and the third kingdom of brass, which would have been the Greeks, and the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, which will be the Romans. For as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things, and as iron that breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Wow. So gold, silver, brass, and iron are representative of kingdoms here. And Yahuwah said they're consecrated to him. The kingdoms are his. So it's not that the leadership itself, it's like, is the United States consecrated? Well, the leadership certainly is not. Are the European countries consecrated? No, but these countries are representative of everything that Yahuwah owns. They're consecrated to him as holy as his possession. He owns the heaven and the earth. So Daniel 2 talks about all the kingdoms of the earth, and it goes into Yahuwah's treasury. And in Haggai, we see a comparison to this line of thinking, this metaphor, if you will, or analogy. And I will shake all nations, and the desire of the nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, says Yahuwah. The silver is mine, the gold is mine, says Yahuwah. Notice that he's talking about this in terms of the nations. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than that of the former, says Yahuwah of hosts. And in this place will I give peace, says Yahuwah of hosts. And Haggai is a post-exile prophet. So Haggai was fundamentally contemporary with the exile of during the time of Zerubbabel, and then, of course, the writings of Nehemiah and Ezra. And Haggai was prophesying, but about a future time, not about the time that they were developing then. They were developing a temple then. He says, I will fill this house with glory. And the glory of this latter house is going to be greater than the former. Well, did it turn out that way? That's what happened in Nehemiah and Ezra's time? No, the glory of that house was lesser by significant amount, is what the account shows us. So this is yet forward looking, when the silver and the gold, talking about the world's powers, are going to be Yahuwah's and go into his treasury. They shall come into the treasury of Yahuwah, says in Joshua. And the people ascended straight up, as the third item of highlight on this page. They went straight up. They ascended into the city, every man straight before him. What parallels that? Yes, in Revelation, we see that in Revelation in the seventh trump, that there's a resurrection. But 1 Thessalonians 4 specifically says, for this we say unto you by the word of the master, that we which are alive and remain of the coming of the master shall not prevent them or precede them which are asleep. For the master himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the phone, the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of Yahuwah. Is this comparable language to a Yobel, or to these shouts that you see in the book of Joshua? And the dead in the Messiah shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up. Going to be harpazoed, seized, catch, plucked, taken away by force, together with them that are in the clouds to meet the master in the air. So shall we be ever with the master. So when I look up into the clouds, I can see out my window right now the clouds up there, some clouds. We're going to meet up. We're going to go straight up into those clouds, just like the Israelites went straight up as the walls fell down in Jericho. This is the first resurrection. And going on in Joshua 6:21, and they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and women, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass, and the edge of the sword. But Joshua had said unto the two men that had spied out the country, go into the harlot's house, and bring out thence the woman, and all that she has, and you swore unto her. So this is the fulfillment of that scarlet red rope. And the young men that were spies went in and brought out Rahab, Her name means proud, broad, and large, by the way. I'm not suggesting she might have been a fat woman. She probably had a big personality. And her father and her mother came out too, and her brethren and all that she had. Then they brought out all her kindred and left them without the camp of Israel. Left them outside the camp, notice, because they were Gentiles. And they burnt the city with fire and all that was therein. Only the silver and the gold and the vessels of brass and iron they put into the treasury of the house of Yahuwah. So let's take a look at the two spies, men that spied on her. Got two witnesses here in Revelation, and I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. Notice they don't have Babylonian garments. They clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before Yahuwah on the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of their mouth and devours their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. It's going to be real powerful two people. In the end, they will be assassinated by the beast system, but they are going to be resurrected 3.5 days later, is what the scriptures tell us. So the two spies in Joshua look to me to be parallel to the two witnesses in Revelation. They're going to burn the city with fire, it says in Joshua. And we see in Revelation the destruction of Babylon the Great. How's that going to happen? Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. How much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she says in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. Somewhat of a puzzling set of statements. I would guess she's talking about she's a queen, has no need of anything, and she is not a widow. This might be referring to the desolation of the land of Israel and Jerusalem as we know it today, that they are going to be thought of as widowed because there's going to be a lot of war activity going wrong, and she's not going to see any sorrow, she says. Well, she's in for a surprise. Therefore shall her plague come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is Yahuwah Elohim who judges her. The silver, the gold, the brass, and the iron are put into the treasury, it says here in Joshua. Revelation 11:15 says, the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices, or megaphones, megaphone in heaven, saying, the kingdoms of this world, what are the kingdoms? We saw it in Daniel, gold, silver, brass, and iron. They're become the kingdoms of our Elohim and his Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever. So now we're going to jump ahead a couple of chapters to the Amorites. There's some interesting material in chapter 7, 8, and 9. But chapter 10, we jump ahead and meet a guy named Adonizedek. And it came to pass, so this is some period of time later, and it came to pass when Adonizedek, which means the Lord of Justice, king of Jerusalem of all places, had heard how Yahushua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed it, as he had done to Jericho and her king, so he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, that they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city. And it's noted as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. So the event we see back in chapter 9 in Joshua 8 and 9 goes into what happened here with the Gibeonites, who came with a ruse, wanting to make peace and make a covenant with the Israelites. And if you read the account, they came with tattered shoes and old worn-out wineskins and moldy bread, and they wanted to create the illusion that they were from a long ways away and they came to make peace. Well, Joshua figured it out, but the Israelites had made a covenant with them. So Joshua is going to honor this covenant that he made with the Gibeonites. It goes on to say, wherefore Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, sent unto Hoam, king of Hebron, and unto Piram, king of Jarmuth, and unto Japhia, king of Lasich, and unto Debar, king of Eglon, saying, come up unto me and help me, that we might smite Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. So this character, Adonizedek, is referenced in 2 places here by name, and in 3 or 4 places total by association. But Adonizedek is a pair of Hebrew words. The first one, Adonai, means to rule, sovereign, or controller. And Tzedek means to be right naturally, morally, or legally. So he's a lord, an Adonai, a ruler, a lord of justice. This is in contrast to Melchizedek, and we'll talk about that contrast here in a second, but let's look at how the anti-Messiah, as he is called, or the counterfeit Messiah, or the substitute Messiah, is seen in Revelation 19. And I saw the beast, which is led by the counter Messiah, and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that's on the horse and against his army. So here's the same set of events. Here's Adonizedek wanting to make war, and here's the beast wanting to make war against the Israelites. So if we look at, in contrast, the Melchizedek means the king of righteousness. It's made up of 2 words, the second word, Tzedek, being the same, to be right morally, legally, and so forth. But the first word of Melech means a king or a royalty, not a lord or a master or a ruler. So a significant difference. Interesting that this character Adonizedek is the governor of Jerusalem, and of course he's not the first governor. Melchizedek was the first governor. You see that the first king and priest of Jerusalem. You see that back in Genesis chapter 14. And so by comparison, we have a first and a last king and priest. And it's significant to note that Melchizedek is a king and a priest, not just a king. So we look in Matthew 5 and see his kingship stated, but I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is Yahuwah's throne, nor by earth, for it's his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. This is Yeshua speaking himself, city of the great king, speaking of himself that's coming. But in Hebrews chapter 7, we see a number of references to Melchizedek there. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, or Jerusalem, and priest of the Most High, king and priest of the Most High Elohim, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him. So we see the difference and the distinction, and that one's a usurper. And it's of noteworthy to see this in this account in Joshua, starting in Joshua 10, that there would also be a ruler in the future, a substitute Messiah that will be acting with the same type of attitude. Going on, therefore, the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lasich, the king of Eglon, gathered themselves together and went up, they and all their host, and encamped before Gibeon. And they made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent unto Joshua to the camp to Gilgal, saying, slack not your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us. Yeah, probably mentioning we have a covenant. For all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. And it goes on to say, and Yahuwah said unto Yeshua, fear them not, for I have delivered them into your hand. Here it is again, a verb tense disagreement here. It hasn't happened yet, but Yeshua says it's a done deal, so you can bank on it. There shall not a man of them stand before you. Yeshua, therefore, came into them suddenly, came by surprise, and went up from Gilgal all night. Let's see what unfolds from this. not a man left standing, as it says here. Yeshua is going to devour all of the earth, the world's governments and governors when he returns with the sword from his mouth. And the beast was taken, it says in Revelation 19, and with him the false prophet that made miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeded out of his mouth. And all the fowls were filled with their flesh. Can you mentally find an image for that? The sword that proceeds out of his mouth. Wow. And it's a surprise attack, it says here in the book of Joshua. A surprise attack. Also, Yeshua returns as a thief in the night. That's going to be a surprise. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked. And they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. And the seventh angel poured out his vial in the air, and there came a megaphone out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, "It is done." Notice that this is Yeshua speaking in the first person here in Revelation 16. I come as a thief. He's stating this, and John is writing it down. So the Amorites are defeated in this account, and Yahuwah discomfited them. He confused them, or he troubled them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon. And it came to pass, as they fled from before Israel and were in the going down to Bethhorn, that Yahuwah cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah. And they died. And there were more which died with hailstones than whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. Then spoke Yahshua to Yahuwah in the day when Yahuwah delivered up the Amorites. And goes on to say, and he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand you still upon Gibeon, and you moon in the valley of Ajalon. So Joshua is telling the sun and the moon to stand still. And he spoke before Yahuwah, he spoke to Yahuwah, and then he said this, and the sun stood still and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Quite a miracle, the astronomical sign. Is not this written in the book of Jasher, it says? It goes on to say, so the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and has not to go down about a whole day. It's noteworthy. It didn't go down about a whole day. I think that might be a clue for us in a calendar study. And there was no day like that before it or after it that Yahuwah hearkened unto the voice of a man, for Yahuwah fought for Israel. So this great slaughter is the first item on this page. We see that same great slaughter in the valley of Megiddo in Revelation 16, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year to slay the third part of men. This is a great slaughter. And the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million, and I heard the number of them. So it sounds like, how do you hear a number of them? I guess he saw it in vision, and he could hear what they were doing. He could hear them moving. So the wrath of man is destroying a third part of men. And the angel thrust in his sickle in the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of Yahuwah. So here's our grape theme. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even to the horse's bridle. That's pretty deep. By the space of 1,600 furlongs. This is a long stream of blood, the wrath of Yahuwah causing this great slaughter. Also is mentioned here that great hailstones come upon Adonizedek and all his armies. Great hailstones also come in Revelation 16, and there were voices, there were phony again, and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. It's going to be a big earthquake, nothing like it. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. Men blasphemed Yahuwah because of the plague of the hail, for the plague there was exceedingly great. And this weight of a talent is something between 75 and 90 pounds, is what you usually find when you research what a talent weighed. So in any case, big hailstones coming down, causing massive destruction. And the sun and the moon are going to stand still here, which is the third item that we look for comparison to Revelation. Definitely has some calendar implications, at least in my study of this, but we'll just talk about the broad view here. So in Revelation 6 goes on to say, and I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, another earthquake, not as great as this last one, but a great one. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. So you will remember this when we were reading through the seals part of the early dialogue in this presentation. The sun becomes black as sackcloth and hair, and the moon become as blood. So they aren't standing still, but comparatively they are massive phenomena and signs that are happening in the heavens. And Revelation 8 has a little different view of this. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, it was flattened out, it was pounded. And the third part of the moon, I would say, would be pounded also, is what's insinuated. And the third part of the stars would be pounded or inflicted also. So as the third part of them were darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So massive astronomical upheaval happening during this time of tribulation. Now, there are implications to the calendar about this event when the moon, the sun and the moon stand still. And I want to take just a couple of minutes just to whet your appetite about this. Going back to the Qumran calendar, which was probably the first few centuries BCE, when this was being talked about. There's a calendar in effect that seemed to be 364 days. That's in contrast to today. We have a 365-day calendar, actually 365.2425, 365 and a quarter basically days. But this Qumran calendar is divided into a very logical, predictable day, month, year. And it's divided into the first month always starting on a Wednesday, on the first Wednesday after the vernal equinox. First month is a 30-day month. The second month is a 30-day month. And the third month, which follows, is a 31-day month. So every day of the week and each month and each date always line up every year. So these 30 plus 30 plus 31, totaling 91 days for a quarter, are repeated times 4 quarters to get 364 days. That's how this calendar works. It's exactly 52 weeks. It's not known or seen that they intercalate days or weeks or months on this calendar. So it's thought that this calendar was during a period of time that there was exactly 364 days. So I don't want to go too much further into it, other than that there's evidence of other calendars. There's also evidence of a Noahic calendar. If you research Genesis chapter 7 and 8, you'll find that the flood started on the 17th of the second month and ended on the 17th of the seventh month, a total of 5 months, and the account says it was 150 days. That would divide out to be 30-day months, 5 months running. If you extrapolate that out, that would be a 360-day year. So there are different calendars that show us maybe very early on there was a 360-day year in the time of Noah, that sometime later there was a 364-day year, and that sometime later than that, obviously, we now have a 364 5.2425 day year. So what happened? Well, there's a couple of events in the scriptures, this being one of the major ones, that showed us that the sun stood still and the moon stood still. The other event is in Hezekiah, with Hezekiah's sundial that was turned back. And so these events fundamentally could well have affected the calendar. Maybe they didn't. Maybe the calendar wasn't affected by them at all, because Yahuwah can create these kind of situations, and he doesn't need our logic or calendar methodology to have things change. But it's of interest just to note this. Also, somewhat of interest is that this account is written in the book of Jasher. Is not this account about the sun and the moon written in the book of Jasher? And if you cared to look it up, you'd find it's in Jasher 88, verses 63 to 65. And you'll see that the sun is mentioned as being held for 36 moments, which you don't know is how long is a moment. You also see that the moon is held all day. So a little different account in terms of the timing of it, but maybe of interest if this sort of thing and calendar piques your curiosity. And Joshua returned, going on here, and all the Israel with him unto the camp of Gilgal. But these 5 kings fled and hid themselves in a cave at Makkedah. And it was told Joshua, saying, the 5 kings are found hid in a cave at Makkedah. And Joshua said, roll great stones upon the mouth of the cave, and set men by it for to keep them. And stay you not, but pursue after your enemies, and smite the hindmost of them. Suffer them not to enter into their cities. For Yahuwah your Elohim has delivered them into your hand. And it came to pass, when Yahshua, and the children of Israel had made an end of slaying them with a very great slaughter, till they were consumed, that the rest which remain of them entered into the fenced city. So the king hid themselves in caves. We see that same phraseology. Great men hide in caves in the events during the period in Revelation. And the heaven departed as a scroll, and when it rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in dens and in the rocks of the mountains. So another parallel event from Joshua to Revelation. And great stones cover the caves, is what it says here. So they hid themselves, and then great stones covered them. Revelation 6 said, and said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne, from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? So great stones are going to cover them too, or they're going to want great stones to cover them. And Yahuwah delivers the Israelites from their enemies. Does that in Revelation, just as he did it in Joshua. Revelation 12 says, and I heard a megaphone saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our Elohim, and the power of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuses them before our Elohim day and night. And they overcame him, meaning they overcame the accuser, by the scarlet red blood of the Lamb. I've added the scarlet red, but that's what color blood is. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. What's that? The evidence that they've given. And they loved not their lives unto the death. So amazing, significant events. So we put this all together. What a set of similarities we find. We see, summarize what's been said here. The book of Joshua, or the book of Yahshua 1, anticipates Revelation. It's a shadow, a figure, or a parable, or something like a prototype or a forerunner of the book of Revelation. We also see that Joshua, his real name is Yahshua, And we see that Jesus' real name is Yahushua also. And we saw that by a simple comparison of Strong's H3091. It should be easy to see that if you just take the time to do it. And that of significance that both of these names mean Yeshua saves, or Yehovah saves, or Yahuwah saves, and Yahuwah provides salvation is the thought of this. And fundamentally, this should be obvious that the first Joshua has the same name as Jesus, and that same name is Yeshua. The first Yeshua led the Israelites into the promised land, and the walls of Jericho fall down on the seventh trump. The seventh Yeshua will lead the entire world into the millennium, and the walls of Babylon will fall down on the seventh trump, is what we've learned here. We've seen that the 7 days around Jericho has a lot of parallel to the 7 seals. And we've seen also that the 7 priests and the 7 trumpets in the book of Joshua have a lot of parallels to the 7 angels and 7 trumpets in Revelation. We've seen that the 7th day trumpet blast and shout at Jericho is the same or similar as the shout of the voice of the archangel, the megaphone, the trumpet of Yahuwah, followed by the first resurrection of the dead. Wow. And then if we put all of this onto a table format, we see that 7 seals introduces the 7 angels with the 7 trumpets. And we see that angels 1 through 4 represent trumpets 1 through 4, and they destroy 1/3 of heaven and earth. We see that angel 5 corresponds to trumpet 5 and lines up with the torment and torture of the unrepentant man for a period of 5 months. It's notable, it's angel 5, trumpet 5, and 5 months. Angel 6 blows the 6th trumpet and slays 1/3 of unrepentant man. Note, though, that 2/3 is still unrepentant. And angel 7 blows the 7th trumpet, and Yahuwah wrests control of the world system and declares that Yeshua's dominion and eternal kingdom is what's in place. And the elect are gathered together during the 7th trumpet. Satan is ejected from heaven and cast down. His ouster has finally occurred. You want him, you can have him. You send him to the earth for the earth dwellers to have until he's destroyed. And the 7 angels and 7 last plagues are associated with the 7 plagues and the wrath of Yahuwah that's poured out on the earth. And what do we see when all of this is finished in Revelation 16? It is done, is what is said. This is an amazing time to have an understanding, to see what's unfolding here before our very eyes. So, as always, my mantra, go do your own homework. Go prove whether these things be for, and scrutinize and examine these scriptures, whether these things are so. Do the comparisons yourself, and study to show yourself approved unto Yahuwah, and be a workman that is not ashamed of his finished product, and divide this word of truth by making straight cuts. Always measure twice, read the scriptures twice, and make that straight cut one time. So next time, we will have part 3. Part 3 is the day of Yahuwah. We will be looking at the scriptures that talk about the day of Yahuwah and all of the activities associated around that day of Yahuwah. Do they all occur on this day memorial of trumpets? Probably not, but the memorial of trumpets is about looking at the record of when trumpets are blown, and when we see a lot of record of trumpets being blown on the day of Yahuwah. So until next time, may Yahuwah be with you and guide you and bless you, and bless the holy day season that's before us, and may Yahuwah's face shine down and be gracious to all of us, and may he be pleased with our growth and development, and may we look forward to his kingdom coming. We thank you, our Father, for this day, and thank you for calling us out of this world's way, and may we be counted worthy to escape the things that are ahead of us and to watch always and to be able to stand before you and Yeshua when he returns to this earth. So thank you for this day. We honor you. We pray that these holy days, this holy day season, this fall holy days will be a blessing to all that are honoring these days. And we ask for your protection and your guidance. Thank you, our Father. Holy is your name and righteous is your way. We look forward to your kingdom coming in your power and your glory forever and ever. Hallelujah and amen.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
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 His descendants will be mighty, generations will be blessed. In Yahweh's commandments, the upright will delight. The righteousness of Yahweh will be forever true. My heart is now established, I will not be afraid. Praise Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears
Blessed is the man
Yahweh.
who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
His descendants will be mighty, generations will be blessed. In Yahweh's commandments, the upright will delight. The righteousness of Yahweh will be forever true. My heart is now established, I will not be afraid. Praise Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Blessed is the man who fears Yahweh.
Unto your book, for
me.